All right, let's dive into a world that's right in front of us, but full of surprises. Mirrors. You sent in some cool stuff about mirrors, and honestly, the more I looked into it, the more I realized how much we just don't even think about these things we use every single day.
Yeah, it's true. We use it
Mar.
constantly, but never really think about the physics or even the philosophy behind them.
I know, right? It's kind of crazy.
Even the word mirror,
Yeah.
it has a sense of wonder to it.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, it comes from the Latin mirari, which means to wonder at or to admire,
Hmm.
which makes me think about how mirrors are kind of like everyday miracles.
Okay, yeah, I like that. Everyday miracles reflecting light and images in ways that we don't even really stop to consider.
Right.
Yeah, that's so cool. I never thought about the connection to miracle before.
Yeah.
So let's get into some of these miracles, right?
Yeah.
One thing I always wondered about, and this is a very trippy thought experiment,
Okay.
what would it be like to be inside a giant mirrored sphere?
Whoa, that is
It
trippy.
is.
So imagine standing in this massive sphere, every surface reflecting you and everything around you.
It'd be wild.
But let's start with what happens to light in that scenario.
Okay.
If you turn on a flashlight and then turn it off, would the light just keep bouncing around forever?
That's a good question. I feel like my gut reaction is yes, because all those reflections would keep things lit up.
Right.
So am I right?
It's a very common thought.
Okay.
But even the best mirrors absorb a tiny bit of light with every reflection.
Oh, okay.
And light travels so fast that even in a giant mirrored room, those reflections would happen so rapidly that each time a bit more light would vanish.
So instead of a perpetually lit up room, it would go dark almost instantly.
Exactly.
Wow.
To our eyes, it would just appear instantaneous.
That's really cool.
But let's move from the light to how you'd see yourself in this mirrored sphere.
Okay.
So imagine floating from the wall toward the center of this giant mirrored ball.
Okay, so I'm picturing a fun house on another level.
Yes.
What would I see happening to my reflection as I float?
Okay, at first your reflection would be super clear, but everything around you would be super distorted.
Okay.
And as you drift backwards, your reflection would shrink.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you reach the center,
Wait, would my reflection fill my entire field of vision at that point?
yes,
Whoa.
it would be like you become the center of your own universe.
Crazy.
Then as you float past the center, your image flips upside down and starts receding.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It makes me think about how, we always see a flipped version of ourselves in mirrors, right?
Right?
And it makes me wonder, is that actually how other people see us?
Yeah. It's something.
Sometimes I look at a photo and think, wait, is that what I look like?
Right.
Does this, happen to other people?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
It's definitely a relatable experience.
Okay.
And there's actually a phenomenon called the mere exposure effect,
What's that?
which means we tend to prefer what we're most familiar with. And for most people, that's the reversed image we see in the mirror every day.
So that's why photos can look so strange to us.
Exactly.
Because we're just, not used to seeing ourselves unreversed.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like if you could see Abraham Lincoln's reflection,
Mm-hmm.
what he saw as his normal self every day,
Mm-hmm.
we would probably think it looked off because we're so used to seeing him in photos and paintings.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Okay, so we're dealing with these flipped images all the time.
Uh-huh.
But is there any way to see our true unreversed image? Can we, unreverse a mirror image?
Yes.
Okay.
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
You can actually unreverse a mirror image using a flexible mirror.
Mm.
If you fold it into a cylindrical shape,
Wow.
you can actually separate the reversed and unreversed images.
No way.
Yeah. Creating what's called a true mirror.
Seriously, just by bending a mirror, you can see yourself as others see you. That's crazy.
I know.
Are there videos online that show how this works? Okay, cool.
There are tons of video demonstrations online that show this.
I'm definitely going down that rabbit hole later. That's wild.
Pretty mind-boggling.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one last question about, the size of our reflections.
Okay.
When we look in a mirror, how big does our reflection actually appear on the surface? Does it change depending on how far away we stand?
That's a great question, and the answer might surprise you.
Okay.
Your reflection on the mirror's surface is always half your actual size, no matter how far you are from the mirror.
Wait, are you saying that if I'm standing, miles away from a mirror,
Yes.
my reflection is still only half my size on its surface?
Exactly.
That doesn't seem possible.
I know.
How?
It all comes down to the geometry of how light reflects.
Okay.
To explain it simply, Think about a triangle formed by your eye, your feet, and the point on the mirror where light reflects from your feet to reach your eye.
Okay.
That's creating similar triangles, meaning they have the same angles but different sizes. And because of that, the relationships within those triangles, your reflection will always appear half your size.
Okay, you're talking about triangles, and geometry is really not my strong suit.
Right.
Is there a way to, like, demonstrate this that doesn't involve, like, complex math?
Yes. A really cool way to see this is by using your phone as a stand-in for your head.
Okay.
So imagine your phone's camera is your eye.
Okay, got it.
Hold your phone close to a mirror and trace the outline of its reflection on the surface.
Uh-huh.
Now take a few steps back.
Okay.
The phone appears smaller from farther away. Right.
Yeah.
But if you trace the outline again,
Okay.
you'll draw a rectangle the exact same size as before.
So even though the phone looks smaller from a distance, its outline on the mirror stays the same size.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
I know.
Yeah.
And that outline represents the size of your reflection, remaining half your size regardless of the distance from the mirror.
It's a little mind-bending.
I know.
But it's a great example of how geometry plays a role in how we experience the world. Right.
Yeah. You know, we've barely scratched the surface of this topic,
Yeah.
and we've already uncovered some crazy stuff.
No,
Mirrors really aren't as simple as they seem.
absolutely not.
Before we move on, though, we mentioned earlier this idea of like unreversing a mirror image
Yes.
and how it's possible.
Right.
Have you ever wondered why we even need to unreverse the image in the first place?
It's a good question.
What's the significance of seeing ourselves as others see us?
It makes you wonder if there are deeper implications to this whole reversed image thing.
Right.
Like, does it affect how we perceive ourselves?
Oh, yeah. Does like impact our self-esteem or body image?
Well, that's a big question.
Yeah, this is getting deep. It seems like mirrors are not only reflecting light, but also reflecting like aspects of our own psychology and identity.
Exactly.
Okay, this is a lot to think about, so let's take a quick pause.
We'll be right back to continue our deep dive into the fascinating world of mirrors. But in the meantime, why don't you, dear listener, take a moment and think about everything we've talked about?
Yeah.
Think about how those everyday mirrors might be shaping your perception of yourself and the world around you.
It's crazy to think about.
We're back and still thinking about all these crazy things about mirrors. Before the break, we were talking about the potential psychological effects of seeing a flipped image of ourselves.
Right.
And it really got me thinking,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on how this might impact our self-perception?
Well, think about it.
Okay.
For our entire lives, the image we see most often is a reversed version of our true selves.
Yeah.
So it's bound to have some impact on how we view ourselves.
So are you saying that the me I see in the mirror
Yeah.
isn't actually the me that everyone else sees?
In a way, yes.
Really?
The mirror image is a laterally inverted version,
Okay.
meaning left and right are flipped.
Right.
And this isn't just a superficial difference either.
Oh.
Studies have shown that people actually tend to prefer their mirrored image
Mm.
over photos,
Interesting.
which suggests that this reversed view is like deeply ingrained in our self-image.
So we get so used to seeing ourselves a certain way in the mirror that it becomes our default perception.
Exactly.
Do you think this, preference has any deeper psychological implications?
It's certainly possible.
Okay.
Some researchers believe that this constant exposure to a reversed image could contribute to things like body image issues,
Wow.
or even affect how we interact with others.
Really?
Because, after all, our social interactions are based on seeing each other's true, unreversed images.
It's kind of like we're living in a slightly distorted reality,
Right.
at least in terms of how we see ourselves. Okay. Before my brain completely melts, let's shift gears.
Okay.
We mentioned earlier infinity mirrors,
Yes.
those mesmerizing tunnels of light and reflection.
Yes.
Can you explain how they work?
Yeah, so the basic concept is pretty simple. You place two mirrors facing each other with a small gap between them,
Uh-huh.
and you add some lights.
That's it.
That's it.
It seems too straightforward to create such a mind-bending effect.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But the real magic is in how the light bounces back and forth between the mirrors.
Oh, okay.
Each reflection gets a bit dimmer than the last, creating the illusion of depth and distance.
So it's like the light is traveling to infinity and back, even though we know that's not physically possible?
Exactly. And while the effect seems infinite,
Yeah.
there is a limit.
Okay.
With each reflection, some light is absorbed,
Uh-huh.
and eventually the reflections just become too faint to see.
Still, it's such a captivating visual experience.
Yeah.
It's like a portal to another dimension.
It really is.
You know, speaking of distorted realities,
Yes.
it reminds me of another question we touched upon earlier.
Okay.
What if, instead of a mirrored sphere,
Yeah.
we had two perfectly parallel mirrors,
Well,
extending infinitely in all directions?
Oh.
Can you even imagine what that would look like?
I'm trying to.
I know, it hurts my brain.
Trying to picture stepping into this space.
Okay.
You'd be surrounded by infinite reflections of yourself,
Oh my gosh.
stretching endlessly in every direction.
Okay, that's a lot to process.
Yeah.
It would be like a hall of infinite selves,
Yeah.
all staring back at each other.
It'd be so surreal.
It would.
Right.
Yeah. It really makes you realize that even though we encounter mirrors every day,
Yeah.
they hold the potential to reveal such profound truths about ourselves and, like, the universe.
Absolutely.
And they also remind us that there's always more to learn,
Yeah.
more to discover, and more to question about the world around us.
Always more.
Okay, speaking of questions, remember how we talked about why mirrors only flip left and right,
Uh-huh.
not up and down?
Right.
I've always wondered about that.
Well, it has to do with the way mirrors reflect light.
Okay.
They reverse along axes perpendicular to their surface, meaning left and right are flipped, but up and down stay the same because those directions are parallel to the mirror.
Okay, break that down for me.
Yeah.
What exactly does it mean for an axis to be perpendicular to the surface?
So imagine a line sticking straight out from the center of the mirror.
Okay.
That line is perpendicular to the mirror's surface.
Okay.
It's like the mirror is flipping the image along that line.
So it's as if the mirror is creating a copy,
Uh-huh.
but only flipping it along one specific direction.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that it's the light itself that's being flipped, not the object being reflected.
Right. So it's not like the mirror is physically, like, altering the object.
Right.
It's just changing the direction of the light that bounces off of it.
Exactly.
That's why if you hold up a piece of paper with writing on it to a mirror,
Yeah,
the text appears reversed, but the actual paper remains unchanged.
exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've established that mirrors create this reversed image. But are there any mirrors that don't reverse our image at all?
Ooh, good question.
Like, is there a way to see a true reflection just as others see us?
Yes, there are.
Really?
They're called non-reversing mirrors,
Okay.
and they work by using two mirrors set at a 90-degree angle to each other.
Two mirrors, how does that work?
It might seem counterintuitive, but the first mirror reflects your image as usual, reversing it left to right.
Okay.
But then that reversed image is reflected again by the second mirror,
Okay.
which is positioned perpendicular to the first.
So the second reflection unreverses the image.
Precisely. It's like a double negative.
Oh, wow.
It's a really clever way to manipulate light and reflection to create a true unreversed image.
That's so cool. It really shows how much we take for granted about the way mirrors work.
Right.
We assume they're just showing us reality, but they're actually creating their own version of it.
And that brings up another interesting point.
Yeah.
Are there any situations where this reversed image actually matters beyond just how we perceive ourselves? Like, does it have any practical implications?
I imagine it could be important in fields where precision is key.
Yes.
Like surgery or engineering.
You're exactly right.
Wow.
Imagine a surgeon trying to perform a delicate procedure
Yeah.
while looking at a reversed image of the patient's anatomy.
Right.
That could be disastrous.
Yeah, it would.
That's why specialized non-reversing mirrors are used in some medical and scientific settings.
Oh, that makes sense. It really makes you realize that something as seemingly simple as a mirror can have huge implications in these different fields.
Total.
It's like a tool that can be used for both everyday tasks
Yeah.
and super complex scientific endeavors.
And it's a tool that's continuing to evolve.
Oh, how so?
Think about smart mirrors.
Smart mirrors.
Yeah, they're becoming increasingly popular.
What are those?
These mirrors can analyze your skin, track your fitness progress, and even give you personalized health recommendations.
That sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
I know, right?
It's crazy. It seems like mirrors are no longer just reflecting our image,
Right.
but also reflecting back, like, information about ourselves.
Exactly. It's a really exciting area of development,
It is.
and it's pushing the boundaries of what we thought mirrors could do.
Totally. Okay, I need a second to process all of this information. You have officially blown my mind.
A lot, right?
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From the physics of light and reflection to the psychological and philosophical implications of mirrors. It's been Quite a journey.
For sure.
But before we wrap things up, there's
Yeah.
one more fascinating aspect of mirrors that we haven't even discussed yet.
Okay.
Their role in art and culture.
Well, that's a great point. Throughout history, mirrors have been more than just like practical objects, right?
Right.
They've been symbols of vanity, portals to other worlds, and even sources of superstition.
Exactly. And they continue to inspire artists, writers, and filmmakers.
Oh, yeah.
Appearing in countless works of art and literature. Well, I think it's safe to say that mirrors are much more than meets the eye.
Definitely.
They're not just reflecting surfaces, but also reflections of our own culture,
Yes.
history,
Mm.
and even our own selves.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we're going to take a brief pause,
Okay.
gather our thoughts, maybe avoid staring into any mirrors for a while, just to let everything sink in.
Sounds good.
But we'll be right back to wrap up our deep dive into the wonderful world of mirrors
Can't wait.
and explore how these seemingly simple objects have shaped our world
Yeah?
and continue to fascinate us today. We're back for one last look into the world of mirrors. Before the break, we were talking about how mirrors have popped up in art and culture throughout history.
Right.
Can you give us some specific examples of how these everyday objects have been given deeper meaning?
Yeah. Mirrors have been such potent symbols in art, literature, and even mythology for centuries.
Okay.
Think about the ancient Greek myth of Narcissus,
Oh, yeah.
who fell in love with his own reflection. It's a story about vanity and, like, self-obsession.
Of course.
And it really illustrates how mirrors can be used to represent our fascination with our own image.
It's crazy how a simple object like a mirror can be used to explore such complex themes.
Yeah.
Are there other examples of mirrors being used to represent, like, deeper ideas?
Oh, there are tons of examples. In literature, mirrors often symbolize things like self-reflection, duality, or even the passage of time.
Wow.
For example, in Lewis Carroll's Alice Through the Looking Glass,
Right.
the mirror becomes a portal to a world where everything is reversed,
Oh, yeah.
which totally challenges Alice's perception of reality.
And what about in art?
Okay, so painters have used mirrors for centuries
Yeah.
to explore perspective,
Uh-huh.
create illusions of space,
Right.
and even comment on the nature of art itself.
Interesting. Can you give me an example?
Yeah. Think about the famous painting Las Meninas by Diego Velázquez.
Yeah. Okay.
It actually features a mirror reflecting the king and queen, raising questions about who's really the subject of the painting.
It's amazing how mirrors can, like, add layers of meaning to a piece.
Yeah.
And kind of force the viewer to think about different perspectives and interpretations.
Totally.
It's like the mirror is a tool for both creating and deciphering meaning.
Exactly. And that's what makes mirrors so fascinating.
Right.
They're not just passive objects that reflect light,
Yeah.
but also active participants in how we view and understand the world around us.
Okay, so we've talked about the physics, the psychology, the philosophy, even the artistic interpretations of mirrors. It seems like we've covered every angle.
I think so.
Is there anything else you think we should mention before we wrap up?
Well, we talk a lot about the ways mirrors reflect light,
Right.
but it's worth mentioning that they can also be used to manipulate and control light.
Oh, okay.
Think about lasers.
Lasers.
Yeah. They use mirrors to create that focused beam of light.
That's right. I never thought about how lasers rely on mirrors to work.
And what about telescopes?
Telescopes.
Yeah. Those giant ones that astronomers use to study distant galaxies,
Okay, yeah.
they use mirrors to gather light from faraway stars.
It's amazing to think about these everyday objects having such a big impact on our lives in
Yeah.
so many ways.
Both practical and philosophical.
Exactly. They're tools for science, art, self-reflection, even simple vanity. Okay, I think it's safe to say we have officially explored the wonderful world of mirrors.
I think we did it.
What a journey. What final thought would you leave our listeners with today?
You know, I would encourage everyone to look at mirrors with a renewed sense of curiosity
Uh-huh.
and appreciation.
Yeah.
Remember that every time you glance at your reflection, you're interacting with an object that has fascinated humans for millennia.
It's true.
Take a moment to think about the science, the symbolism, and the sheer beauty of these reflective surfaces.
Very well said. And to our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive as much as we have.
It was fun.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep reflecting on the world around you. You never know what you might discover